Okay, class, so I wanted to answer some questions about your outline. And I'm going to do that by having your worksheet and the sample literature review side by side, as you see. So the first page of your worksheet is really just information on setup of your paper, okay? So that as you're writing your outline is going to be the most useful for you when you go to turn it into a rough draft next week. So it's has a few bullet points reminding you what you need to do as you write your paper, and an explanation of APA's Level 1 headings. This is super important because APA format really emphasizes clear, succinct organization. And having headings within your paper, the sections of your paper, really is the most, it's the clearest way to show how your paper is organized so that the reader of your paper at a glance can understand what your paper is intending to, information your paper is intending to import to the reader. And you should know that by having read 5 or 6 scholarly articles now in the sciences, they were all formatted in this very way, this APA formatting. So this first page, again, explains sort of general information on formatting, and then this real detailed description about Level 1 headings in APA format. Okay, so then when you get to the next page, this is your actual outlining worksheet. So let's go ahead. Of course, we're going to cover formatting in terms of the title page and the abstract, and the graphic a little bit more detailed next week on your Monday memo. You'll get that information. So right now I just want to kind of talk about what you're going to do with this outlining worksheet by looking at this sample paper. Okay, so we're going to skip over. So here in our sample paper, The Impact of Pet Ownership on Individuals with Autism, a literature review. This right here is your introduction. So when you are outlining your introduction, you want to take a few notes. Again, I call this a worksheet. This is really more of a guideline. You're going to open your own Word document up, and you're going to use your own Word document using this worksheet as guidance. All right. So you're going to take some notes, some bulleted notes on what you think you want to do with your introduction. So a literature review, the introduction is going to give information on any background information or definitions that you think are important. It's going to explain why this research topic was important. You might talk about some kind of trends or the growing need for more for research into your topic. So that is roughly what your introduction is going to do. It's going to set the stage for the reader to understand why you are interested in doing research in this subject matter. And you will end your introduction with your thesis or purpose statement. You can call it a purpose statement. Your thesis will follow this particular pattern. You will say this review synthesizes, or this review explores, or you're going to pick some verb that really does kind of get at the heart of what you're doing. This review synthesizes current research findings, or you could say this review explores research from 2020 to 2025. You could give the dates. Regarding, then you'll say your issue. So in this case, regarding the influence of companion animals on individuals with autism and their families. So that's your topic. With particular attention to social skills development and pro-social behavior. That's your first concept. Family dynamics and parental well-being. That would be your second concept. And the quality of human-animal relationships. Your third concept. So this is going to be not unlike your traditional research paper thesis statement where you name your issue and you name the 3 topics that you're going to explore. All right, so as you can see right here, we've got a level 1 heading, centered and bolded. So when you're doing your outline, you'll go ahead and put level 1 heading, center and bold. I'm not going to be particular about how these look. I just want to see you have enough information and know how you're going to organize your topics. So for each section, you want to start off with a couple of sentences, as you can see here, that explain this particular trend. You've got to tell me a little bit about this concept. So in this case, I wrote here, the development of social skills among individuals with autism appears to be positively influenced by pet ownership. This relationship provides a unique pathway for social development through animal-human interactions that can be less overwhelming than typical human social exchanges. So this is sort of, in a nutshell, the research that was done on this concept or this subtopic or this trend, however you want to think about it. Then you launch into your studies. If you look here in this first paragraph, you've talked about 2 different studies. These would have come from your synthesis table. So Carlisle, 2015, conducted a survey of 70 parents of children with autism spectrum disorder and found that children who own dogs demonstrated higher social skills scores on the Social Skills Improvement System rating scale. This finding was notable. Okay, so you're going to summarize what your studies said about this subtopic. And then you'll move on to the next one. You'll say, oh, not only did Carlisle look at that, but Grand George et al. 2012 also looked at that. And then here I continue on with yet a 3rd study that covered this particular research trend. All right. And then here I synthesize and I say, how are these studies alike and how are they different? Collectively, these studies indicate a consistent pattern of enhanced social engagement. So I go back and I discuss how are these 3 studies similar, how are they different in relationship to this topic. Okay? And then I move to the next subtopic. This again comes from your matrix table, and I spend a couple of sentences explaining what I mean by family dynamics and parental well-being. And then I launch into the first study that discussed it, and then the second study. And in this case, it was just 2 studies. The synthesis of these findings reveals a complex interplay. So then I have my synthesis paragraph at the end, wherein I say, okay, here's how these studies were similar, here's how they're different. And I do it all over again for my 3rd paragraph. And then finally, my conclusion talks about the gaps in the research. I recap what I've discussed, and then I say, okay, so after doing all this research to see what's been studied already, what still needs more work? Where are the gaps in the research? That's what your conclusion is for, okay? And I might highlight if a particular article that I read mentioned that more work still needs to be done on a certain area, I can mention that in this conclusion paragraph. All right, so as for your outline, again, each section is going to follow this particular way of going through, open with a topic overview, present your individual studies, and end with a synthesis paragraph. Okay? When you're presenting your studies, though, remember you are not giving your big summary that you gave in the annotated bibliography. You are only talking about what that study said about that particular subtopic. Okay? And so you may talk about, for example, Carlisle 2015 in several different places. In fact, you can see that Dolion et al. 2024 gets discussed in this section and in this section. So that's not unusual. Then again, your conclusion has to do with a summary of what you've learned and what still needs more research. All right. What is it going to look like in the outline? Well, there's no set. This is, again, I called it a worksheet. That was something of a misnomer. What I really want is for you to just sort of bullet out so I can see you know how you're going to move from topic to topic, trend to trend within your paper, and that you've got your level 1 headers named, and that you understand how all of that is going to be sort of organized in your paper. That's all I'm looking for. And then when you go to write your rough draft next week, you'll pull your outline out again, and you will write it from that outline. So the more detailed, the better for you. All right. So if there's any other questions, you can send me another email. And again, next week, we're going to really dig into making sure you have the papers properly formatted, and that you know how to write an abstract, and that you know how to include your graphic. And we'll take a look at that, and that will be in Monday's memo.